everyone who's joining us. We're just starting the webinar to let people join. We'll be starting the actual presentations in about 5 minutes. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, everyone who's joining us. Thanks for dialing in. We're just going to give everyone a few more minutes to join, and then we'll be starting the presentation. Thanks for everyone who's calling in. We're just going to give people a few more minutes to dial in here, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started this morning. So hi, everyone. My name is Laura Harwick. I'm the Chief of Party of the USAID Funded Climate Adaptation Support Activity. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm also joined by CASA's Communications Manager, Hannah Blair. You'll see her posting comments throughout the presentation, so just that's who that is. I wanted to start by quickly going through what this webinar will cover. We'll start with an introduction and then have presentations from CASA, from USAID Zambia, and the USAID Kuza project in Kenya about their work supporting locally led adaptation. At the end of the webinar, we're going to have about 25 minutes of Q&A with the audience. So, oops. In terms of housekeeping items, just a few things before we get started. First, this session is being recorded. A copy of that recording will be distributed to everyone who signed up. Second, the information in this webinar and the associated products do not necessarily reflect the views of USAID or the United States government. And lastly, as I just mentioned, we'll look forward to answering your questions at the end of the webinar. We're asking that everyone ask their questions using the Q&A function in Zoom. I've highlighted it here on the screen. We're going to work to answer as many of those as we can at the end. Feel free to ask them whenever you want throughout the presentation. We'll be pulling them out and kind of handing them over to the panelists. So please ask questions as they kind of come up in your mind. I wanted to briefly introduce the CASA project since we're hosting this webinar. CASA is a 5-year activity designed to provide strategic support to USAID missions, operating units, and bureaus to advance effective adaptation, mainstreaming, and programming, and to scale meaningful change. Today, we're going to be discussing CASA's work supporting locally led adaptation, in addition to the other presenters. If you want to learn more about CASA, I've put our links to our Climate Links page and our newsletter on the screen here. I've also provided relevant contact information, but we can jump right into it. I'm excited to introduce today's presenters for this webinar. Laura Hammett is CASA's Adaptation Director. She has over 15 years of experience in climate risk evaluation and adaptation solutions with global partners. She provides technical leadership to CASA as it supports USAID's implementation of the climate strategy. Catherine Luando Tembo is Environment and Energy Team Lead at USAID Zambia. She oversees climate, forestry, and energy programs and is the mission liaison with the government of Zambia and donors on climate change and environmental matters. And John Githiaka is Senior Capacity Development Lead for the USAID Kuza project in Kenya, where he specializes in strengthening governance and institutional capacity. He brings over 16 years of experience in public and development project management. For our first presentation, I'm going to hand over to Laura Hammett to talk about CASA's work supporting locally led adaptation. Laura?
Thanks so much, Laura, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'll start things off today with a bit of background on our work with USAID to advance locally led adaptation across the agency before turning to the few specific examples from the field. So on the next slide, we'll start off with what is locally led adaptation. So many of you may be already working to advance LLA, as it's called, as I'll refer to it. But local communities and actors are on the front lines of climate change impacts, yet they're rarely having a voice in or agency over the decisions that surround adaptation funding and programming that can really affect those communities the most. So locally led adaptation is a set of approaches that aims to shift this status quo and empower communities to take charge of and lead their climate adaptation strategies themselves. This set of practices values local knowledge and systems and addresses power imbalances, connects local actors with devolved financing and decision-making, and really fosters an equitable and effective response to address climate risk. And because adaptation stretches across really all sectors, locally led adaptation can help donors, partners, and other implementing agencies, in addition to USAID, to advance locally led development in other areas beyond, across the development sector. Next slide. In 2021, the Global Commission on Adaptation led the development of a set of principles to strengthen LLA. Those principles are intended to guide funding, programming, and practices that support local actors in leading adaptation design, processes, and outcomes. Over 100 entities have endorsed the principles, including USAID, and USAID announced their endorsement at COP26 in Glasgow in 2021. Together, these principles take a systems approach to really recognizing and utilizing local knowledge and systems that exist already, but also strengthening local capabilities, integrating local decision-making and financing into national or global decision-making processes, and addressing structural inequalities faced by critical populations that are often really the root cause of vulnerability to climate change or closely connected. So we'll hear from two separate USAID activities in a moment that actively put these into practice on a daily basis. But first, I'll turn to how these align with USAID's strategic policies and frameworks at that kind of macro level. So next slide. So the 8 principles really support USAID's existing commitments to equitable climate action and locally led development. These are just a few examples of the policies and strategies that guide USAID's programming and work with partner countries to advance sustainable development and adaptation action. There are several that are whole of US government commitments that USAID also supports, like the Prepare Action Plan, that are not pictured here. But a couple of examples from this slide. So USAID's 2022 to 2030 climate strategy includes locally led development as one of its foundational principles. So it really recognizes throughout all of the targets within the strategy that sustainable and equitable climate action should be locally led, locally owned, and also implemented and be tailored to their specific context. This is in line with the USAID localization commitments, which include a target for at least 50% of all programming to be locally led or administered by 2030. So as the agency moves forward with all of these ambitious targets under these policies and strategies, the principles for locally led adaptation are really a key resource. Next slide. So CASA has worked with USAID to develop 2 new resources this year to help put the principles of LLA into practice within the agency and scale LLA. The first of these is a primer that's pictured here, and I believe the link is also in the chat. Thank you, Hannah. This provides an overview of locally led adaptation and its role as an important component of USAID's commitments to local sustainable development and humanitarian action. It's a resource not only, though, for USAID, but also for anyone else who's interested, who seeks a foundational understanding of what locally led adaptation is, why it matters, and how it connects with sustainable development overall. And it recognizes that this is one of many different available resources. There are many organizations working to advance locally led adaptation. Several of USAID partners have useful tools and guidance available as well. So the primer was designed to recognize and include a list of ideas for further reading and learning as well. Next slide. The second resource that CASA worked with USAID on is a more detailed guidance note. It focuses on really the operationalization of those 8 principles. So it is organized by the USAID program cycle, and that's what's pictured here. So it identifies entry points for USAID to work with communities, partners, local actors across all stages of programming, from strategic planning, design, and implementation, and then also critically monitoring, evaluation, and learning, which then would get brought back into the strategic planning process. So this directly links back to all of those USAID policies and strategies that I mentioned before to connect locally led adaptation back to development goals and objectives of USAID. And it really focuses on the how. How do we get this done? So it's nice to talk about locally led adaptation, but what does it look like in practice? What are the tools, approaches, existing funding and procurement mechanisms that USAID operating units can use to put principles into practice? So we've included some case studies in this document from across the agency and other USAID partners, and I'm really excited to hear from a few more examples of locally led adaptation in practice here today. I think Dr. Tembo will be sharing more about how USAID Zambia is using different procurement mechanisms to work with small organizations in leading adaptation action, for example. And procurement is really a key piece of this programming puzzle. Next slide. So finally, I'll leave you with a couple lessons learned from going through this process of developing these resources and working with teams across the agency to put these out there. So first, I really want to emphasize the importance of mainstreaming equity and inclusion into everything we do at the local level. So adaptation action can be locally led and unfortunately still reinforce damaging power imbalances or vulnerabilities. Secondly, a lot of the work of locally led adaptation is around consensus building and building relationships, which takes time. So as development actors, we can really appreciate that not all parties can come to the process with the same definitions. For example, local or adaptation may mean different things to different people. And there may be many right answers or pathways to adaptation success, just depending on who's involved and what the context might be. And then finally, locally led adaptation is definitely growing, but it's still a new concept, and sharing practical examples or demonstrated approaches is really valuable. And like we're doing today, can really help advance the uptake of locally led adaptation in practice and scale needed action. So I'm happy to answer any questions when we get to the Q&A, but I'll pass it on to Dr. Tembo to walk us through the work of the USAID Zambia team and continue the conversation. Thanks.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. My name is Catherine Tembo. I'm the team lead for the Environment and Energy team here in Zambia. I'm going to highlight how us as a mission are working with local organizations through our USAID Zambia Local Climate Action Innovation Annual Program Statement. So basically the annual program statement is a procurement mechanism that we use as USAID, just one of the many procurement mechanisms. And there's a reason why we decided to go with the route of an annual program statement. One of the reasons is that this is a flexible, adaptable mechanism. It's broad enough. It allows for innovative ideas from industry, and also it is flexible in funding. It allows for organizations submitting their proposals on a rolling basis. It's not really like structured like the other mechanisms where if the closing date ends, then that's it. So this one allows organizations to submit applications on a rolling basis, probably maybe over a period of 12 months, and also gives an opportunity to even work with small local organizations that normally do not work with USAID. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so we just heard from the previous presentation on the locally led adaptation principles, and I just want to take a minute here to look at what are some of those locally led adaptation principles that are applicable to our climate annual program statement. So we see that there are quite a number of the principles that are also applicable to the work that we are doing in this space. So we see one of them being devolving decision making to the lowest appropriate level. This is applicable in the sense that we are working with local organizations who are the ones that are driving development from the various platforms where they are operating, and they are making their own decisions at that level in terms of taking innovative climate action at different levels, working with the local communities. So we see the principle of devolving decision making to the lowest appropriate level being applicable to our mechanism. The other principle that relates to our support under this project is the flexible programming and learning as you will see in the presentation, in the slides that I'll be highlighting, there's been quite some flexible programming in terms of the organizations that we've been working with under this particular support. Then the last principle, the last adaptation principle that we see linked to our support here is investing in local capabilities to leave an institutional legacy. I think for us this is quite important because oftentimes local organizations are not at a level that is of high capacity. So we deliberately made an effort to support the local organizations in terms of building their local capabilities and also leaving an institutional legacy that should be able to thrive even beyond the USAID funding. So we see this one as quite a critical principle as well. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the bigger picture of our local climate annual program statement. So we, as a mission, we are using this platform to fund small scale, locally driven and innovative ideas. And these are ideas that have a climate lens attached to them, innovative ideas that are being undertaken by different organizations that you will see shortly. So the rationale or the idea of going the local climate annual program statement way was to give us an opportunity to work with local organizations that normally do not work with USAID. So we have a funding envelope of 332,000 US dollars, and each individual awards has not been more than 50,000, because remember, we are working with local organizations, so we want to start working with them in terms of funding, sort of like giving them smaller amounts, and then probably maybe setting them up for progress for them to access maybe even future funding in the future, should there be other opportunities. Next slide. Okay, so what is the main focus of our local climate annual program statement? So one of the focus is to support climate smart innovations. So we are looking at supporting climate smart innovations that actually have a component of driving economic growth. Then the other focus is for USAID, us as USAID, to be able to expand direct relationships with grassroots organizations. It could be community-based organizations or private sector organizations. Then we also have a focus of engaging the private sector as well as communities in climate-friendly economic growth. Next slide. So our project has priority themes that focuses on climate action, localization, and also private sector engagement. So you will see that these themes are also USAID priority themes, and our project also cuts across these three climate action, USAID priorities. Next slide. Okay, thank you so much. So having highlighted in terms of providing a background on what our focus has been and why we are working with local organizations, I want now to focus on highlighting the different organizations that we are working with. By the way, we are working with 8 local organizations, and I'll highlight the different interventions or activities that these organizations are focusing on. So we have an organization that is focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this is an organization that is focusing on transitioning consumers to a more plant-based diet. And this organization is working with farmers who are producing the raw materials for these plant-based diet. Another organization that we are working with is an organization that is focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector. So this is an organization that is using waste, supporting waste to produce products that are then being sold. So they are recycling waste and producing other products that are being sold on the market. So they are making money from waste products. Then we also have another organization that is empowering local farmers with skills in silviculture implementation as well as natural resources management. Another organization that we are working with is supporting agroforestry training as well as promoting agriculture extension services for smallholder farmers in Zambia, one of Zambia's rural areas. Next slide. Okay. So we have another local organization that is focusing on improving local capacity for land and natural resources management. We also have an organization focused on enhancing the resiliency and economic independence of women farming cooperatives. So this organization is providing support in terms of solar powered irrigation systems for the women to be able to undertake agriculture activities. Then we also have an organization that we are supporting that is focused on agriculture activities to enhance food security, and also they are promoting sustainable agriculture practices. And lastly, the eighth organization is focusing on supporting sustainable income for rural communities, specifically looking at beekeeping as well as honey production as income generating activities or conservation enterprises, if you like. So yeah, so this is our local climate action annual program statement, highlighting how this support that we are providing fits into the locally led adaptation principles with a focus on a climate lens. Thank you so much for your attention. Over.
Thanks, Catherine. And John, we're going to hand over to you next.
So good afternoon and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you for this brief presentation on what we are doing as an activity that is funded by USAID Kuza, but by USAID Kenya. The activity is USAID Kuza. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the work that we will be discussing this evening and this morning is basically the work that USAID Kuza has been working with one of the counties. Kenya is devolved into what is called the administrative regions, that we call them the counties. And Lamu County is one of the counties that you've been working with. Lamu County geographically is located in the coastal part of Kenya, and it is an archipelago, as in it consists of islands, about 64 islands, but only about 5 of them are inhabited. The county is a unique county in that it is a UNESCO heritage site, having the oldest and the best preserved Swahili settlement in the eastern coastal region of Africa. It also has the oldest continuous civilization in that region. The county has a local population whose culture draws mainly from Islamic and Swahili traditions, and it also has a significant immigrant population that undertakes farming and business practices. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is the map of Lamu County, the one that we'll be discussing today. As you can see, on the south eastern side, it borders the Indian Ocean. On the northeastern part, it borders Somalia. And on the western side, it borders the rest of Kenya, including Tana River counties. Next slide. Yeah, so Lamu County is one of the counties in in Kenya that is classified as arid and semi-arid regions. The county has a land water mass of about 308 kilometers square, and it borders Indian Ocean to the southeast, Somalia to the north. The county has about 64% of forest cover. And unique to this county is that the county has the largest mangrove forest in the region. And this mangrove is important because it supports the very sensitive marine ecosystem in the Indian Ocean, which supports a lot of the marine animals like the crabs, the shrimps, the fish in the breeding and all that. The key economic activities that are undertaken in this county include tourism, fishing, as well as farming. And increasingly, we're also seeing port activities as a result of construction of a new port in the county. Next slide, please. So for the purpose of our discussion this evening, I'll highlight some of the key challenges that the county has continued to experience in the recent past. One of the challenges being the adverse weather conditions, changes occasioned by the effects of climate change. There has also been increased pressure on the local environment and social systems resulting from the recent major infrastructure projects in the county, one of them being the Lamu Port and another one being a major infrastructure project that is called the LAPSET, the Lamu Port South Sudan Transport Infrastructure Corridor. The third challenge that the county has also experienced is the increased pressures on land arising from an increasing local population as a result of population growth, but also quite a significant immigration for work and business. There is also quite some threat arising from to the mangrove and marine ecosystem arising from increased commercial exploitation through fishing, and also the cutting of the mangrove trees, which happens to be one of the most sought after hardwoods. There has also been in the recent past the accumulation of marine pollution, such as the plastic waste. Next slide, please. As a result of those challenges that the county experienced, there has been a need for the county to continue increasing its technical and resource capacity so as to address specifically three broad areas. The first areas being the local adaptation strategies to mitigate the environmental, the social, and economic effects of the climate change. But secondly, also to strengthen the local community resilience, and thirdly, to build sustainable livelihoods that also safeguards the environment for the county. And as a result of this, next slide, please. Yeah, as a result of this, this is where now USAID Kuza came in. USAID Kuza, as I mentioned, is an activity that is funded by USAID Kenya mission, and it works to promote economic opportunity in the arid and semi-arid counties of Kenya. Lamu County is one of the counties that fall in that ASAL region, and the activity partnered with Lamu County to address the challenges that we've mentioned above. Next. So as a result of this partnership, USAID Kuza then partnered with this organization or this program that we call the Financing Locally Led Climate Action. And just in form of a background of this financing locally led climate action, the government of Kenya and the World Bank partners initiated the FLOCA program. This is a program that is currently covering about 45 counties of Kenya, including Lamu. The initial rollout of this program will experience quite some delays occasioned by limited capacities of the counties. And USAID Kuza was requested to come in and provide the technical support to selected counties so that these counties can be able to access this financing and this program. And Lamu County is one of the counties that was selected for support. And we'll hear more about what you've been doing on this. Next slide, please. So we, as the USAID Kuza, we have been undertaking technical assistance, and specifically is to operationalize this program, the Financing Locally Led Climate Action Program. USAID Kuza provided a technical assistance to meet the access conditions for Lamu County, and specifically worked in the broad areas that are outlined there. First, we support the county to develop a policy framework that consisted of a policy, a climate change policy, a climate change act, but also a climate change financing regulations. Number two, we also supported the county to establish a climate change fund. Number three, to appoint an accounting officer. Number four, to have appointment of the county executive committee member for climate change. And just to note here is that this county executive committee, it is the highest making and governance structure in the county. And to underscore the importance that this county put towards this work, is the executive committee member that was appointed to be in charge of climate change was a deputy governor of the county. Fifth, we also supported the operationalization of a special purpose account for the climate change. But also most significant was that the county capitalized on their commitment towards the climate change work by setting aside a minimum of 1.5% of the county budget or county development budget. Currently, it ranges between 1.5% and 3% every year. Next slide, please. Yeah, and as a follow-up to that, USAID Kuza also supported the county to operationalize the institutional structures that were required to make sure that a FLOCA program becomes operational. The first institutional structure is a Climate Change Steering Committee. This was the apex governance structure. Then there was a planning committee at the county level. This was the team that was involved with the technical planning aspect. Then there is also the ward planning committee at the devolved ward level. Remember, this is a local this is a locally led program. And then there's also the climate change unit, which is the technical team. The USAID Kuza also supported the participatory climate risk assessment, and also the development of the county climate change action plan. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just a pictorial representation of some of the initiatives that have happened along the way. This is the depiction of some of the capacity building sessions for the ward climate change planning committees. These are the devolved committees, and you can see some of the capacity building sessions combining practical sessions, but also interactive lecture sessions and group discussions. And here we had the involvement of all with the women, the people with disabilities. Next slide, please. This is also another level, community level sessions to undertake the participatory climate risk assessment. As you can see, the community members were actually leading the process in actualizing the skills that they learned. You can go to the next slide. So in terms of some of the key achievements that we've been able to make is that, number one, Lamu County has been able to access, to meet all the access conditions and to receive the climate change institutional strengthening grant to the tune of about 11 million. This was the initial grant that was given in the first year of the project to make it to strengthen the institutional structure. Number two is that the county was able to operationalize the institutional. Number three is that the county was able to undertake the participatory climate risk assessments. Number four is that the climate, the community members were also able to develop the local adaptation work plans, which were consolidated into the county level action plans. And consequently, the county has now been able to access to the total of 59 million of the what is called the county the climate change resilience investment grants, and they've been able to undertake this work. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I finish, this is just again to highlight some of the work the communities that have been doing in terms of the short-term outcomes. One is the community-led identification and prioritization of climate risk. As you can see, the communities are doing this work themselves. Next one. Again, the communities in practice are identifying the risks that they want to address. And as I finish, the next picture is just showing some of the adaptation work plans. Yeah, so some of the preliminary results, I've already mentioned the identification of risks and the local adaptation strategies. We've also seen the increased and ring-fence government allocation of resources towards climate change work. We've also seen increased integration, layering, and coordination of work among development and implementation partners. And finally, we've seen increased intersectoral mainstreaming and coordination of the implementation of the climate actions. The very last slide is just showing some of this work that you've mentioned. This is part of the community doing their own adaptation strategies and plans. The next one is showing the communities actually implementing some of the projects that are already underway. Next slide. Yeah, some of the activities undergoing. Some of them are done in the institution like schools. Others are done at the community level by the community members. And there are also some of them done commercially so that they are also able to support in income generation. Finally, in terms of the next steps, we intend to continue providing the technical support towards the locally led adaptation efforts. And number two, we also want to continue lending some hand in terms of building the capacity for resource mobilization, both locally and also internationally. And finally, to enhance sustainable livelihoods and community resilience initiatives. For example, right now, there is already some work going on that is helping the young people, the youth, to do some income generation activities through crab farming, while they also preserve the mangrove ecosystem. So let me end it there and welcome any questions and comments that we may have. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, John, and thanks to all the presenters who walked us through their projects and their work. We do have about 20 minutes for Q&A. Thanks to everyone who's put questions in already. Please continue to submit your questions through the Q&A function, and we'll see how many we can get through in 20 minutes. But maybe first, Catherine, starting with you. There are a few questions about kind of capacity around the APS program. The first was, is there any form of education at the beginning of the APS program to help these communities understand climate change and its effect? Could you respond to that, Catherine?
Yes, we do. We actually, before we make the award, we actually have what is known as a pre-award conference or meetings, if you like, where we have meetings with industry to share with them what the thinking is around the priorities and the programming that we are interested in. And at that point, during those meetings, we do provide information. We do like an orientation on climate change and why it is a cross-cutting issue and why it's important to focus on climate change as a priority. So specifically for this particular project, we did work with different organizations that attended our meetings. So we did engage them. Thank you.
Great. And maybe, Catherine, just to build on that, there was also a question about strengthening the capacity of awardees. So did you work with awardees to help build their capacity to design and implement their activities? And if so, what did that process look like?
So related to that, we have another project called USAID Local. This is a project that is supporting the capacity of local organizations. So we've linked all our 8 Ds to this USAID Local project, specifically to support these local organizations to build their capacity. So we've made that deliberate effort. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. And John, a question for you, I think. We had quite a few questions actually about how you monitor and evaluate impact of these localization activities. So John, I'll ask you this question, and then Catherine, if you have anything to add, please feel free. But the question is, please share a bit more about how locally led adaptation principles are applied to USAID's monitoring, evaluation, and learning for these projects, particularly around custom performance indicators and/or new and creative feedback mechanisms. So John, could you talk about how USAID Kuza kind of monitors the impact of its program and what your M&E program looks like?
Thank you, Laura, for your question. Let me mention that USAID Kuza, in the course of the implementation of the work, we are implementing our M&E on various. First is in terms of the capacity building work, there is the measuring of the number of people that are reached by the capacity development efforts, either through trainings or technical assistance. But we also go beyond there to see at the outcome level how these skills and capacities that are being built, how they are translating in terms of the work that they are doing. Specifically for the work that we're doing in Lamu, we are looking at also, especially among the young people and also the women, part of the climate action work involves those that are engaged in the adaptation efforts. And some of the adaptation efforts are also involved in undertaking activities. For example, in one of the photos, you saw the tree nursery that is there. And the way this work is being done, some of them are being done in a commercial way so that they become sustainable. So we are able to measure also, like, for example, those young people that are involved in adaptation efforts, how many jobs, for example, are being created for the young people and for the women in the adaptation efforts that are being done. I could mention, for example, some of the adaptation efforts that they are doing in the crab farming. There is a job survey that is going on to try and see, to measure how many youths are getting some level of employability from the activities that they are being done. So there is, to answer your question, is to say that yes, we are measuring those that are being directly reached by our activities, but also the outcomes that are being achieved from those activities are done in terms of what is the outcome of the skills that they get, and also the job creation efforts.
Great, thanks so much, John. And Laura Hammett, do you have anything to add based on the work CASA did in developing kind of guidance around the principles for locally led adaptation?
Yeah, just briefly that it's high level and not as specific as the examples that John brought up, but there are points in the operationalization guidance that I mentioned before that do speak to some of the tools available within USAID to integrate the principles of locally led adaptation and practices into monitoring, evaluation, and learning frameworks. There's a couple of examples in there as well of other tools in use. And just to say that the principles really highlight the need for flexible and adaptive approaches, so that maybe the ways and also involving local actors in development of those monitoring and evaluation frameworks as the design of projects and activities is underway. So thanks.
Thanks so much. John and Catherine, John, maybe we can start with you. We had a few questions about how this localization work kind of flows up to the national level. So one question is, in engaging at the local level, have you seen that work is sometimes impacted by national or regional level government? For example, impediments due to government policy or service delivery inefficiencies. And if so, how do you go about supporting the local organization? So John, could you talk about what, if any, work you do to kind of make sure that the localization that's happening, that you're supporting in LAMU, is kind of flowing up as it needs to the regional and national level?
Yeah, thank you once again, Laura. Just to mention that we are addressing the aspect of localization from various levels. The first level is we are working at the policy and systems level by supporting the local organizations. Sorry, I think my camera had an issue. Yeah, we are working at the policy and systems level by ensuring that the local actors being both the community actors, but also the other non-state actors like the local community-based organizations, the youth groups, and the women groups, that they are more engaged in the governance structure. Partly how we have done this is when, for example, the policy framework for the climate change was being developed, we ensured that there was representation of the youth, of the women, of the persons with a disability. But also, once the policy framework was developed, we also had the implementation framework of the policy. And the local level was also involved in the development of the implementation framework, clearly defining the role of the women and the youth, and also the marginalized at the community level, how they would be engaged at the implementation level. And this implementation is actually enhancing a lot of the locally led, so that the involvement is not just some kind of a tokenism. We've also seen this at the implementation level, where we've seen that a lot of the implementation of, for example, the FLOCA program has been utilizing the bottom-up approach, whereby the whole aspect is the community-led. Maybe also something to mention is that Lamu County is also one of the counties that we supported through our policy support function to develop a public participation policy. And through that policy, we've seen a lot of local level organizations being involved in the public sector problem identification and also resource allocation decisions. So we see a lot of this happening. For example, even as we speak, the national level public financial management framework utilizes the Lamu case as the best practice in terms of the community involvement in public sector planning and decision making. And the key lessons from that have been applied to the other counties across the nation have been borrowed mainly from the work that has been done within the climate change work. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, a lot of the local communities and the organizations, they have been integrated in the decision making, in the policy formulation, but also in the implementation of the initiatives. And also finally, even in the monitoring and evaluation, they use a lot of the participatory approaches, so that the communities are also able to gauge how they are doing, and they are able to actually develop their own remedial strategies to address any areas that need to be addressing. Finally, is just to mention, like in the month of June, we had a midterm review of the program. And this midterm review brought together all the facets of the community within the Lamu. There was a representation of the youth, representation of women, representation of persons with disability, representation of the private sector, the business community, the chambers of commerce, within the climate change work so that it enhances the work being done. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, John. Catherine, I don't know if you had anything to add to that question specifically about how you see localization flowing up to the national level, or kind of the impact of national or regional level policies and regulations on your ability to support locally led adaptation.
Yeah, certainly, sure. So if you look at the focus areas for the different organizations that I just presented, these are focus areas that are a priority also for the Zambian government: waste management, natural resources management, agriculture productivity. So all these are priority areas. So we see the activities being implemented by these organizations feeding into the priorities that are the priorities at national level. So yeah, there is that alignment.
Great, thanks so much. And maybe if we can stay with you, Catherine, we had a question about kind of some recommendations you would have for other USAID actors. So the question is, are there aspects of your programs that you would recommend other missions or USAID entities apply to their investments?
Yes, certainly. I think a focus on working with local organizations is one of those that I would encourage other missions to consider, because the organizations that we are working with, these are like community-based organizations, local organizations. And in an ideal world, they would not be in a position to compete for the bigger awards that maybe like over 10 million. So it's about designing projects that will meet the needs of the local organization, allow them to compete at that level. Because obviously for an award of maybe $24,000, the bigger organizations will not be interested in such a smaller, to compete for such a smaller award. So they would leave it for the smaller organization. And because the smaller organization are not in a position maybe to compete for very big awards, like maybe for over 10 million. So it's about being deliberate and intentional on creating platforms or mechanisms, procurement mechanisms that will allow local organizations to be able to compete amongst themselves. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Catherine. John, did you have anything to add to that question in terms of recommendations you would have for other USAID missions or USAID actors to replicate your success?
Thank you. I think what I would add is just to underscore the very, very important role that the local level plays in terms of the converting the policy level, system level aspirations into actual practices and results at the ground or at the community level. And this is one of the projects that has demonstrated the power that the communities have in terms of being able to identify the challenges they have, but also being able to design the remedial actions, like what you see in the adaptation strategies, and being able to follow through in implementing this. The second point probably is just to underscore the role that technical assistance plays in terms of supporting and hand-holding these communities. The technical assistance, some of it being in terms of providing the skills, but also some of the tools that the communities may need so that they are able to actualize the action plans. Probably the final one that, if you allow me to mention, and related to the question that you had asked about the monitoring and evaluation. When we started this work, we undertook to do a baseline assessment in terms of the institutional capacity for climate change within the Lamu County. And we are happy to report at that point when the USAID Kuza work was starting, we had an institutional capacity score of about 39%. And we replicate this assessment every year. And by the end of the first year, that score had improved to 69%, up from the baseline score of 39%. And we are planning to do a similar assessment later in the month of September, so that we can see again 1 year later how has this improved. So we are happy to note the progress that is being achieved across board. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And Laura Hammett, I know that CASA developed some tools specifically on guidance for USAID. Did you have anything to add to this question as well?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I just wanted to go to what we were talking about with the connection between these efforts and national planning and policy and programs. So USAID, is working across a variety of different development sectors in both these countries and worldwide, and it's an opportunity, as Dr. Tembo was mentioning, to connect with those priority sectors for government advancement and support of sustainable development. So, for example, also there's an opportunity to connect these lessons learned and the activities from these two activities with processes like the national adaptation planning process, or other advancement of national climate finance priorities. I know USAID Kenya is supporting a variety of climate finance initiatives as well. So just wanted to make sure that link is made as well. It's not just about these particular activities, but they exist in a broader ecosystem of support to the partner countries and collaboration.
Great, thanks so much. And I think we have time for one more question. We've had a few questions about the sustainability of these various activities, so I think we can end with that. Catherine, could you speak about kind of what you see in terms of sustainability for the APS programs, the organizations or companies you funded? Yeah.
Okay, yes, so I can quickly speak to the aspect of sustainability. So this project is milestone based, and one of the first milestones that all these 8 organizations have to work on is the preparation or development of the business plan. So this is a business plan that should be able to see them through beyond USAID support. They can be able to, raise their own finances and so on and so forth. So that speaks to sustainability, the development and implementation of the business plan. Thank you. And the capacity building as well that we continue.
Thanks so much, Catherine. John, did you have anything to add in terms of what you see as the sustainability of Kuza support?
Yes, let me mention at the local level, one of the ways that we've looked in ensuring that the initiatives are sustainable is as much as possible is the initiatives are local, meaning that much of what is done is utilizing the local materials and local labor, meaning that beyond the external input, like of technical assistance, the communities are able to sustain this using the local materials and the local labor. Secondly is within the climate change policy framework, there was a clause on the DRA, on the climate change fund. The one that I mentioned has a minimum of 1.5%. And this was committing the county government to be allocating a minimum of that towards the climate change work, so that beyond the external financing, the government allocation goes towards the climate change work. Maybe the final one I would want to mention is that there has been increasing move towards ensuring that many of these initiatives towards the climate change adaptation, they are also commercialized to the extent that they are able to generate some level of income. For example, I mentioned about the crab farming that is being utilized also as part of the conservation of the mangrove ecosystem, so that the young people are able to generate income from the crabs, from the prawns and shrimps, and at the same time, they are able to preserve the mangrove forests and prevent it from being cut. Some of the other young people that are involved, for example, in the cleaning up of the ocean front, they have gotten involved in recycling. and using the commercial initiatives of making this to become an initiative that would also generate income that can be plowed back, but also provide some level of income for those doing it. So that's what I would say for now. Thank you. Probably, sorry, one final one to mention is that we are also in a partnership support with the GIZ in supporting the county government to develop a climate financing policy that is looking towards expanding the domestic and the international resource mobilization efforts towards the climate change, and also to just continue to ensure that the adaptation efforts continue beyond what USAID Kuza is doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John, and thanks to all of our presenters today. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. I'm so sorry we weren't able to get through all of them. This, as we mentioned at the beginning, we will distribute the recording of this webinar, so you'll have an opportunity to go back through it if you missed some pieces, but we'll go ahead and wrap up there to be respectful of everyone's time. Thanks so much for joining us today.